floats at first glance seem like they're pretty simple, but when you start looking at them more closely, at their behaviors, things do get a little more complex. And let me just show you a bit of that complexity. So right here we have, what I was showing you in the previous image. A paragraph that is basically wrapping its text around a floated div. But if we actually put a border around, and it looks like, probably the paragraph itself is also kind of, adjacent here. But if we put a border on this paragraph, we can see that things are a little bit different than our intuitions. So 2px, let's make it solid, then red. So as you can see here, while the content inside the paragraph is wrapping and sees the floated div, the paragraph in its entirety doesn't see it really. And the same thing is true here for this footer. So like if I take this clear out of here, out of the footer, you can see that this footer is also superimposed, or not, is not really seeing the floated div. The text may be, but the div is not. So in a lot of contexts, that particular behavior isn't going to make things more complicated for you when you're doing layout. But there are circumstances when it will. For example, we have here two divs, and I've just given them different IDs, 1 and 2. And the first div is a height of 100px or 300px and a width of 100px, and I set the opacity to 0.2 so we can see some stuff that's going on behind the scenes. Now, and then the second one is similarly styled, only with a different color, and it's a slightly bigger height. So let's float this first div, and let's see what happens. Float left. And notice what happened is that the second div no longer really kind of sees the first div. It's extended up into it, and it's still sticking out on the sides, right? And that's kind of pretty interesting behavior, I think. And it's something to watch out for. And what's interesting too is things get even more complicated when you go and you float this second div. So let's float the second div, and let's see what happens now. We'll float it left. And now all of a sudden the second div now does sort of effectively see the first div, and they're kind of lining up in columns. And this kind of behavior is actually used, is leveraged by CSS developers to create column effects in their layouts. And I have an example of that right here. Here we have a 3-column layout with a header, some header styling here, which is describing this, and then our divs below that. These should probably be paragraphs. And all we've done here is we've set a width of 3% of the viewport, and then we've added some padding, and then we floated all of these divs left. If we take out this float, watch what happens. They just stack. But effectively, by floating them, they all line up in this sort of as columns. But you would just keep in mind that you need to float all those divs, because if you just floated one of them, you wouldn't get the effect you wanted.